Hello everyone, this is Soumya. In this video, I'm going to explain abiotic factors, uh, mainly concentrating on the light, temperature, and the soil. When we were discussing the ecology, by looking at the definition of the ecology, it is nothing but the total interaction of biotic and the abiotic factors. For the better survival of the biotic factors, abiotic factors are must needed, and abiotic factor has got a great influence towards survival of the biotic individuals. So here in this video, I'm concentrating the light, temperature, and the soil. Light plays a very important role in the life of an organism. Uh, as we all know that sun is a main source of energy or light energy for us. It's a natural source, and we are getting a plenty of light from the sun. So, based on the availability of the light as a abiotic factor, most of the organisms, the biotic individuals, had changed or they got adopted their behavior uh, in such a manner that they have got a great influence towards the light. Take, for example, we have the day and the night cycles, and the organisms or the animals which are active at daytime are the diurnal animals, and the animals which are active at nighttime are the nocturnal animals. So, in this way, light has got a great influence on the biotic components. And when you look into the abiotic factors, the influence of the abiotic factors on the biotic factors is very much, and it is very sensitive too, because if there is any slight change, we have got a threshold for the abiotic factor influences on the biotic factor. If the threshold, uh, if any of the abiotic factor influences or exceeds to the threshold level, then there will be a uh, the effect of the that particular thing can be noticed in the biotic components. So that is what we call the threshold level. So when look into the light rays, what we receive from the sun. So we have got a broad spectrum in the light rays we receive from the sun. They had got a microwaves, infrared rays, X-rays, UV rays, visible light, so on and so forth. And all those light had got influence on the biotic component. And light rays, as we all know that according to the Einstein's theory, so light actually passes as a pocket of energy, and that energy will be received by the organisms in order to fulfill their requirements of day-to-day life activities. And for that, we have animals have got light receptors. That is what we call the photoreceptors. Starting from the protozoa until the mammals, we have got a photoreceptors. We are sensitive to light. See, we the humans can receive the light and we can see the objects. And like how the protozoans, they are some individuals are they'll move towards the light, and some individual they'll move away from the light. That is what we call the phototaxis in case of the protozoans. And with respect to the environment, light variability is different in different environment. The light in the polar regions, the light in the thick forests, evergreen forests, the light in the regular terrestrial habitats, the light in the deserts. So the intensity of the light varies in the different environmental condition, and accordingly, the organisms which are living in that particular environments had got adopted to that intensity of the light. So, light also has got an effect on the plant life itself, because plants are purely dependent on the sun. Since these are the autotrophic individuals, they have to prepare their own food, and to prepare their own food, they have to undergo photosynthesis. And for that photosynthesis, sunlight is a main source. So with that, they can actually go for the photosynthesis and prepare their own food. And we can also know that the plants always go or they'll grow towards the light. So their growth is always towards the light. So effect on animals. So light has got a great influence on the life of animals. So their light effect is on protoplasm. So we all know that every organism is composed of cells, and within the cell we have the protoplasm. Light has got an influence on the protoplasm. If at all, if any of the radiations is stronger, they may cause mutation in the protoplasm. So various mutation, even the mutation can happen in the bacteria, viruses. So as we all know that today's pandemic condition is because of coronavirus, and that coronavirus DNA RNA is mutating every now and then, because it's naked, and the sun rays will be affecting. So every now and then there will be the mutation in the cytoplasm or in the DNA of the particular virus. So this is also happen in the higher animals even. And effect on metabolism. So we all know that we are the homeothermic animals. We humans are the homeothermic animals. We need to maintain the constant body temperature, constant physiology, and everything. That is what we call the homeostasis. And all this will be regulated by the metabolic processes. And this metabolic process is greatly influenced by the light. So if at all, see the night time will not having much of metabolic activities, whereas in the daytime, our metabolic rate will be high. So this is how the light has got an influence on our metabolism even. Light has got an influence on pigmentation. See, the skin of an individual or the pigmentation happens, or that will be affected by the light. So if you get exposed to the light for a longer duration, the pigmentation will be very high. If you get lesser exposure, the pigmentation will be very less. We can distinguish this, or we can actually observe this particular thing in case of the fishes. The dorsal side of the fishes is greatly pigmented than the ventral side. Side will be lighter because the dorsal surface of the fish will be greatly exposed to the light when compared to the ventral side of the body. And light has got effect on the animal movement. As I said, even we will get or will move towards the light because we are the animals got adopted to the light. So we'll move towards the light, and some of the protozoans they'll move away from the light. So on this case, light animal movement is also influenced by the light. And the celestial orientation, in the migration and the other stuffs, the whatever the celestial orientation, the direction of the sun, the stars and everything, that they emit the light, their own light, and based on that the animals go for the migration and the everything. And we also have the photoperiodism. Photoperiodism is nothing that the biological cycle we have. See, we humans are the most of the animals have got the biological cycles. That is what we call the circadian and the circannular rhythms are there. Circadian rhythms, see, take for example, it is a 24-hour cycle. We got adopted to that particular by nature. We have to be a circadian animals. That is, we have to wake up in the morning. We have to do all our activities in the morning, and at night when there is no light, we need to sleep. So this is a circular cyclical pattern of the rhythm that we follow every day. But these days, because of the technology and the other stuffs, we actually changed their what is that, the routine. But of course it is not a good sign, because the one who is doing the night shifts and the everything, they'll be more prone to the certain what is that, what I can say, like the depression and the certain diseases, and they're going to hamper their metabolism even, and the rate of reproduction will be less in those individuals. So all these physiological factors will be affected if we don't sleep properly. So it is must for us to maintain the circadian rhythm. It is also observed in some of the animals, like circannular rhythms are there based on the season, based on the intensity of the light, based on the temperature. Animals will be adjusted to certain stuff so that they can adopt their physiology to that particular extent. Take for example, some of the seasonal breeders are there. They get or their gonads will mature at a particular time. So these are the circannular rhythms, and that happens in a cyclical manner. In every year, in that particular month only, their gonads will develop and they'll go for the reproduction process. It is also influenced by the light. So this is how and light affects the reproduction even. So as I said, if we hamper our circadian rhythms, definitely will end up with the various sterilization condition. Even the animal, the annual breeders, some of the individuals are seasonal breeders. They are also influenced by the light. Light also affects the reproduction in case of the individual. Light also affects the development of an individual. So if there is, we all know that vitamin D, which is necessary for us for our strength and the height, which is available from the sun. We have the precursor of the vitamin D, and if sunrise falls on us, the vitamin D is going to, and the precursor will get converts into vitamin D, and then the strengthening of the bone and the height will attain. So this is how the growth of the individual is also affected by the light. Yeah. Till now, we discussed the influence of light on the biotic factors. The next one is the temperature. I can say temperature and the light, they'll go parallelly as a natural source, but there are other ways where we can generate the temperature without being generated the light. So temperature has also got a great influence on the animal life. Because when look into the nature of the temperature, temperature is nothing but the heat that will be felt by the organism. As I said, the Einstein's pockets of energy, this light pockets of energy, they are having the light along with that. They have the temperature, and that will be felt by the organism. And accordingly, the adaptation have been undergone in case of the organism. And based on the, I mean, the temperature, of course, like the light temperature, we can also see the variations of temperature in the different areas of the planet. So some in some regions, like the polar regions, the temperature is very less. That goes to the minus levels, and even in the European countries, most of the years they will be having the winter seasons. Whereas in case of the Western countries, most of the years they'll be having the winter days. In our eastern countries like India and the tropical countries where they have been located in the equator, near the equator, we are getting plenty of light, and throughout the year we'll be having the light in the temperature. So accordingly, the temperature, there will be fluctuations of temperature in different regions. Accordingly, the animals and the organisms have got adapted to that particular temperature ranges. And there are certain organisms, they can tolerate the temperature. Some animals will call the eurythermal animals and the stenothermal animals. Eurythermal animals are the one which can tolerate wide range of temperature variations, whereas the stenothermal individuals are the one, they can tolerate only slight changes in the variation in temperature. And based on their what is that, the temperature resistance, we can classify the animal group into two groups, that is a poikilothermic and the homeothermic animals. The poikilothermic individuals are the one, their body temperature actually varies with the environmental body temperature, whereas the homeothermic individuals are the one, their body temperature remain constant, though there is variation in the environmental temperature. Take for example, the fishes, amphibians, and the reptiles, they belong to the poikilothermic individual. So their body temperature varies with the environmental temperature. If the environmental temperature drops down, their body temperature also drops. If the environmental temperature elevates, their body temperature also elevates. But we, the humans and the birds, we belong to the homeothermic individuals. I mean, the mammals and the birds belong to the homeothermic category. We'll maintain the constant body temperature. That's why we humans have a normal body temperature. So if there is any slight changes in the temperature, that will be end up with the fever or the hypothermia conditions will be seen in case of the humans. But we have a constant body temperature, and in order to maintain the constant body temperature, we have certain metabolic physiological changes or the adaptations, so that that can maintain the body temperature constant. And temperature plays a very important role, or yeah, for that, as I said, mammals and birds, they are the homeothermic individuals, and to maintain that constant temperature we have various mechanisms. And what are the mechanisms that we have? There are certain insulating properties can be seen in case of the birds and the mammals. In case of the birds, they have the feathers. They'll fill the air between the feathers and create a buoyancy, so that yeah, they can insulate their body temperature, because they need body temperature to maintain the metabolic processes and for the enzymatic activities and for the flight mode of life. And we humans, we have got various mammals, we have got various adaptations, like the development of the fur, hair, the body hair we have, it is an adaptation to maintain the body temperature. Like how we'll go for we have the adipose tissue as an insulation. The blue whale, which is an aquatic individual, have got a thick blubber as an insulating layer, so that it can maintain its body temperature. Because since it is in a aquatic medium, the chances of dropping the body temperature is very high in them. That's why they are provided the blubbers in order to maintain the internal body temperature constant. So likewise, we also go for certain behavioral changes, like will shrunk our body, will close with the blankets and the other stuffs. And there will be the constructions of the blood vessels, so on and so forth. And in the and for the higher temperatures, even these are for the colder temperature. When the temperature elevates, we sweat. We sweat to lose the temperature. So that is how we are adopting to the both higher and the lower temperatures. Plants has got also the effect of temperature on them, because for the what I can say, for the ambient growth, or for a flourished growth of the plant, there should be a ambient temperature, or else that may reduce the growth of the plant, or that may destroys the plant if the temperature elevates. So temperature is also dependent, or it also affects the reproduction rate. So if the temperature is high in certain regions, there the mutation rate will be very high, so that it affects the reproduction rate. Even if it is lower temperature, there also the reproduction rate will be very less. But in the ambient temperature, the reproduction rate will be very a good number of reproduction rate will be seen in case of the countries where or the places where the ambient temperature is there. And temperature also affects the sex ratio, the sex of an individual. Some of the organisms, the sex of an individual is influenced by the temperature, environmental temperature. So in those organisms, the sex ratio will be varying with the different environmental conditions or the temperatural conditions. And the temperature also affects the morphology of the individuals. Take, for example, in case of the certain lower animals, the morphology of the individuals will be varied according to the temperature. The region of the body which is get exposed to the sun for a longer duration, they have certain additional morphological structures over there when compared to the region where they won't get exposed to the sun. And animal behavior also influenced by the temperature and the distribution of the animals. So usually the number of the organisms in the higher temperature zones will be very less when compared to the moderate temperature zones. Take for example, the organisms which are present in the desert area is very less when compared to the organisms which are there in the eastern, the western Ghats, where it is very ambient for the organism to survive. So this is how temperature influences, and even the it influences the moisture. Even moisture which is needed by the organism is also influenced by the temperature. So this is how the temperature influences for the abiotic life. And we can see certain adaptation or the behavioral changes that can be seen in case of the animals to overcome the higher and the lower temperature. As I said earlier, in case of the lower temperatures, there will be the blubber, adipose tissue, feathers, fur, and so on and so forth. That will be helpful for the for the animals to get protect from the lower temperatural conditions. Whereas in the higher temperatural condition, they go for sweating and the panting. In case of the dogs, they do pant to lose the temperature, and in case of the higher animals like us, we do sweat to lose the temperature. And some of the animals, since they can't tolerate the higher temperatures and the lower temperature condition, they'll go for the dormancy stage, where they'll be in a dormant state and there will be no activities, so that they can escape from the extreme situation. That is the hibernation and the estivation processes or mechanisms can be seen in certain animals to overcome the higher and the lower temperature extreme conditions. And yeah, some animals, they go for the thermal migrations. In case of the birds, we can see from the summers and all, we can see the western country birds which are there in the western countries. In order to overcome the very low temperatures, they do migrate to the eastern countries like us. So they do that is the thermal migration. So to overcome the lower and the higher temperature extremes, the animals do migrate. So that is the thermal migration. We discussed the influence of temperature on the animal life and the biotic factors. So next we'll move on to the another abiotic factor, that is the soil. Soil also plays a very important role in the life of the animal. So as I said, the soil, the it is a major or a very beginning state of the earth. So the earth is composed of soil, and soil plays a very important for the life of the animal, because animals, the plants, organisms are dependent on the food as their basic need, and the food that is produced by the plants, the autotrophs, will be influenced by the quality of the soil. So soil has got a greater influence on it, and even the animals, for their survival and for the betterment, soil plays a very important role. We know when we look into the, or when we take the section of an earth, we are going to study the various stages of soil, the humus and the other. When we go deeper towards the earth core, will got different layers of the soil, and according that is to test the quality of the soil. So when the soil quality is very good, the growth of the autosomes or the producers, the plants, will be good, so that the other hierarchies, the consumers and the other hierarchies can live better if they are living in the good soil condition. And for the shelter and the other stuffs also, soil plays a very important role. And we can see certain decomposers, the microorganisms, which are mainly dependent on the soil, or they'll live better in good conditions of the soil. Because if any changes in the soil quality, like the pH of the soil or the organic components in the soil, if that get reduces, the soil will become like sterile or a barren land can form. So that is the reason soil also plays a very important role as an abiotic factor for the life or the survival of the biotic factors. Yeah, to conclude with, in this session or in this video, I discussed or I explained the various abiotic factors like the light, temperature, and soil, and their influence on the life of the biotic factors. So all these are very crucial for the life of the biotic factors. Yeah, these are the references I consent for this particular video content. Thank you.